So today, let's talk about a book about the Beatles, of course.
Yes, Hunter Davies' tone, the Beatles' lyrics, the stories behind the music, including the handwritten drafts of more than 100 classic Beatles songs. It's
Yeah.
a really important book from a Beatles insider.
It is, and it's a book people have very strong feelings about. Some love it, some not so much.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so interesting.
Right, because you have this central conflict right from the start. Hunter Davies, he was the authorized biographer, the guy who gets called bullshit by John Lennon himself.
Yeah. And then decades later,
Yeah.
he comes back with what is arguably the single most valuable collection of Beatles artifacts in existence.
It's an incredible story, and I think for you listening, this is really a look at second chances, but also at the value of the raw creative process.
That's it. It's about how these handwritten drafts, we're talking about scribbles on envelopes and napkins, how they completely contradict the polished mythology of the band, a mythology that Davies himself helped create.
Okay, so let's set the stage. We have to go all the way back to 1966 to understand how this all started.
Right. Davies was a pretty well-known journalist at the time. He approached Paul McCartney, but not for a biography.
No, not at all. He wanted Paul to write a theme song for a movie that was being made from his novel, Here We Go Round the Mulberry Bush.
And Paul, being Paul, saw a bigger opportunity. He wasn't really interested in the song, but he suggested, why don't you write our biography instead?
Which was just a pivotal moment. I mean, think about it. At that point, the Beatles story was just chaos, both through fan magazines and tabloids.
Total chaos. So Paul and Brian Epstein saw this as a chance to control the narrative, to create the official record. And Davies got the green light.
And what a green light it was. For 18 months, from 66 to 67, he had access that, well, no journalist has ever had since.
Unprecedented is the only word for it. I mean, he was in the recording sessions. He interviewed everyone, the band, their families, their wives, their associates.
Crucially, he was there during the making of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. He was literally watching genius happen.
He was. And all that access is why his 1968 biography became the foundation for everything. It created what we now call the canonical Beatles mythology.
It really did. That book is where the world first got the official story of the Quarrymen, John meeting Paul at the Woolton Feet.
Hamburg, the cavern, Brian Epstein discovering them.
Even the official reasons for firing Pete Best. It's all there.
Every single Beatles book or documentary you see today uses that 68 biography as its skeleton. It's the baseline.
But the world was changing so fast then. In 1968, the book was seen as, shockingly candid.
For its time, yeah. Admitting to LSD use, using the word fuck, that was a big deal in 68.
A huge deal. But then you flash forward just 2 years to 1970. John Lennon is in his post-Beatles primal scream truth-telling phase.
And he's tearing down that very mythology. So the book that was candid in 68 suddenly becomes, in John's famous words to Rolling Stone,
Bullshit.
bullshit. And he had very specific reasons. He felt the book was sanitized. He complained that it didn't mention orgies, claiming Davies left that stuff out to protect their wives' feelings.
He also felt it downplayed the drug use, and maybe most importantly, it couldn't explicitly state that Brian Epstein was gay.
Even though John claimed they gave Davies permission to do so.
What a position to be in for a journalist. It's the ultimate tightrope walk, isn't it? Full, unfiltered truth versus keeping that incredible access.
And he chose access. He created the myth. But that criticism from John, it stuck. It defined Davies for decades.
It did. But what's really remarkable is that many, many years later, Davies himself basically admitted John was right.
He did. He wrote an essay, I think, in the New Statesman, and said, and I'm paraphrasing, that while he revealed a few warts, he ultimately subscribed to their carefully cultivated image. And then he just wrote, bullshit or what?
Amazing. A rare moment of public contrition from a journalist. But that whole controversy leads us to the second act.
To the receipts?
Exactly, the receipts. Because while he might have compromised on the story in 68, he became the unlikely savior of the physical evidence.
And that brings us to the 2014 book, The Beatles Lyrics. The real value of this book isn't his new commentary, which is a whole other can of worms we can get into.
No, the value is the artifacts themselves. It's the photos, the high-resolution scans of over 100 original handwritten drafts of their songs.
And how he got them is just, it's mind-boggling.
It really is. He didn't buy them. They weren't a gift, not really. The Beatles just gave them to him.
They literally handed him these scraps of paper during that 18-month period because to them, in 1967, that's all they were, disposable.
Just work documents. They were writing songs at an incredible pace, jotting lyrics down on whatever was nearby.
Hotel stationery, the backs of birthday cards, envelopes.
Yeah.
Once the song was recorded and finished, the draft had no value to them. They'd just toss it.
It's hard to even wrap your head around that. But Davies, being a writer and a historian, he kept them.
He kept them. And over the years, these little scraps of paper, this evidence of their messy, spontaneous process, they became priceless, worth millions.
And you can tell how their status changed just by where they ended up. Davies loaned his main collection to the British Library.
The British Library. I mean, think about that. These scribbles are in the same institution as the Magna Carta. That's the level of cultural importance they've reached.
And for the 2014 book, it wasn't easy. He had to go on this global hunt to track down all the other drafts.
Yeah, they were scattered everywhere. Private collectors, other museums. Northwestern University, of all places, has the biggest public collection outside of his.
It's incredible. But let's talk about what you actually learn from seeing these drafts. This gets to the heart of it for anyone who writes or creates anything.
Yes, this is the uncomfortable truth part. When you look at the pages, you see the process. You see the angry crossouts, the arrows moving verses around.
You see a line rewritten 3 or 4 times before they find the one we all know. It's messy. It's not magic. It's work.
It's pure spontaneity. It shows they often started with just a rhyming idea or a sound, not some grand poetic concept. A song could start one way and end up being about something completely different.
Lines that feel so essential to the final song, you see them crossed out, almost abandoned.
And this is so important. Sometimes the most iconic words were never even written down. They were just improvised in the studio, a moment of inspiration during the actual recording.
Which brings us to the core insight, really. When you strip away the melody, the harmonies, Ringo's drumming, the whole arrangement, the lyrics on the page can be, well,
They can be incredibly simple, repetitive, sometimes just nonsense syllables to fill the space.
or even cliche. And this is the uncomfortable part for some fans. They're not poems set to music.
They're not. And that's not a criticism, it's an observation. The genius wasn't primarily literary, it was musical. The words were the perfect vehicle for the musical ideas.
Take an early one, like, I want to hold your hand. If you just read the words on a page, they're...
It's childlike.
Yeah.
Very, very direct.
But you pair them with that melody, those harmonies, that explosive energy, and it becomes transcendent. The simple words let the music do the heavy lifting.
Or, she loves you. It's basically a simple report of a conversation, but the yeah, that's not a literary device. It's a sound, an explosion of joy that defined a generation.
And you can see in those drafts that the music was the engine. You look at a song with a really iconic instrumental part, that complex bass line that drives the whole thing.
Like in Day Tripper or something.
Exactly. The words are simple scaffolding. They provide the structure, but the real magic, the feeling, is coming from the melody and the rhythm section. The simplicity of the lyric lets that incredible bass riff be the star.
And that's maybe why Davies' commentary in the 2014 book gets so much criticism.
Right. People are really divided on his analysis.
It's a fascinating split. On one hand, you have people who find his insider view, utterly compelling. He was there. He can give you personal stories about Brian Epstein that no one else can.
He's the eyewitness.
But on the other hand, critics are quick to point out he's no musicologist. They hate it when he dismisses a song they love or when he makes these reductive statements.
Like saying the music was for a young teenage audience.
Which is true for the start, but it sounds dismissive of the incredible artistic evolution that happened later. So he holds the primary evidence, the raw truth.
The receipts.
But his own narrative voice is still kind of tainted by that bullshit label from 1970. He's this contentious curator.
But this is where we get to the redemption part of his story. The biographer who compromised in '68 became the custodian who provided the irrefutable evidence decades later.
And he admitted John was right. That's the key. He completed the circle. He went from myth maker to truth revealer, using the very things the Beatles themselves threw away.
And here's the final irony. Davies' book, with the handwriting of all 4 Beatles showing how messy and collaborative it all was, it came out in 2014.
Way before Paul McCartney's own huge 2-volume book, The Lyrics, which came out in 2021.
He beat Paul to the punch using John's and George's handwriting artifacts that Paul himself couldn't provide because they were lost, scattered to the wind.
Saved only by the journalist who was once scorned. It's an incredible full-circle story.
It is. So at the end of the day, the real value here is seeing that raw, unpolished creation process. It's a reminder for all of us that songwriting is a craft. It's messy. The perfection happens in the studio with the arrangement, the performance, not just on the page.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to one last thought for you to chew on. That original 1968 biography, the one John called bullshit, is still considered an essential, highly ranked text today. It's still the starting point.
It is. So here's the provocative question. What does it say about history and how we tell it if the compromised, imperfect myth is the necessary first step, the indispensable foundation that you need before you can even begin to tear it all down and find the deeper truth?
Well, thanks for joining us today. Whenever you feel like knowing more about the Beatles, visit us at BeatlesRewind.com. Every day, we do something new there. Song reviews, album reviews, movie reviews, book reviews, documentaries, trivia, all things Beatles. Every day, 8 days a week. You can find us on the website, BeatlesRewind.com. You can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon Podcasts, practically anywhere on the inner tubes. The Beatles, all day, every day. We'll do it again tomorrow, right?
You bet. See you next time.
Until next time, when you listen.
Your mind conducts its own symphony.